Chapter 1. The Phone That Sparked a Scandal. The chandelier above shimmered like 1,000 tiny galaxies, caught in mid-breath. Beneath its glow, Jasmine Leclerc wove through the sea of couture and champagne with a smile that barely clung to her lips. Her custom-designed gown, crimson silk, with hand-beaded lilies stitched along the spine, clung tighter than her composure. Every step echoed, "You don't belong here." She pressed a hand to her stomach, willing it to settle. The gala was a glittering dream, but dreams had teeth. Tonight was her first global debut, 1 capsule collection, 6 dresses, and everything riding on a single hour in Milan. Jasmine smoothed a curl behind her ear and scanned the crowd for her sister Vanessa, but only caught glimpses of faces she couldn't name. Editors from Vogue Italia, minor royalty, someone from the House of Dior. She turned, colliding with a waiter and narrowly avoiding a spill of wine on her gown. Laughter rippled nearby. "Jasmine Leclerc," a voice purred. Parisian sensuality, New York hustle. The industry's current obsession. She pivoted to face the tall man with Nordic cheekbones and a predator's smirk. Henrik Stahl, founder of the fashion tech app, Tailored. He wore his tuxedo-like armor. Every line too precise to trust. Jasmine summoned her media smile. "I wasn't aware I'd become an obsession," she said. Henrik chuckled. "Oh, but you have. Especially to your investors." He leaned closer. "Be careful. Milan eats its young." She laughed politely and walked away, her heels clicking too fast across the marble floor. Behind the curtain of camera flashes and social maneuvering, she slipped into the foyer, needing breath. Her phone buzzed. "Vanessa." Jasmine swiped to answer. "Where are you?" Vanessa snapped. "You were supposed to meet the buyer from Galerie Lux." "I just needed a second," Jasmine said, lowering her voice. "My heart's racing like I ran here from New York." "That's because you're panicking again. Don't screw this up. Not tonight." The line went dead. Jasmine exhaled, letting the insult land like a paper cut, small, sharp, familiar. She turned to return to the ballroom, but paused when her phone buzzed again. This time, the name was unfamiliar. Donovan. She frowned. A second buzz. Then a third. Messages popping up in some encrypted app she didn't recognize. Something about secure sync interrupted. She stared. That wasn't her messaging app. Jasmine checked the case. Hers had a scratch on the top corner. Chipped rose gold paint. This one, sleek, silver, pristine, wasn't hers. "Oh my God," she whispered, as ice slid down her spine. In her haste, she'd picked up the wrong phone. Meanwhile, across the ballroom, Leo Donovan stood beneath the shadow of a sculpture he found grotesque, eyes narrowed at the woman in red silk vanishing into the crowd. He wasn't supposed to be here. He hated galas, hated the way the flashbulbs tried to reduce him to angles and labels. Billionaire recluse, genius dropout, cyber king. Milan's elite didn't care that Leo Donovan built one of the most secure operating systems in the world. They cared that he hadn't been seen in public since his last scandal. A betrayal. A fiancé. A leak. Tonight he was here on behalf of his sister's charity, and for the briefest moment, he'd found himself intrigued by a laugh, her laugh. Jasmine Leclerc. He'd heard the name. He never expected the person behind it to feel. He reached into his jacket for his phone, except what he pulled out was bedazzled, glittering, and hot pink. Leo stared. What the hell? A Face ID prompt appeared with a lock screen that shimmered with a background of a tiny black cat in a red beret. The name read, Jazzy Legal. He blinked once. Then again. He was holding Jasmine Leclerc's phone. Back in her hotel room, Jasmine's panic bloomed into horror. The borrowed device had just unlocked on facial recognition and opened to an album of private photos, medical scans, a stitched wound on someone's abdomen, a video 2 seconds long, just him staring into the camera with tired eyes and saying, "Doc, these are the results. Let me know if I should worry." She closed it immediately, heart thudding. She had Leo Donovan's phone. Her hands shook as she tried to call herself. No answer. Her own phone was likely with him, if he'd even discovered the switch. Then, a buzz. Notification. Instagram auto 5 complete. Jeden new story posted. Her breath caught. She opened the app, and there it was. A blurry, automatically posted clip from Leo's camera roll. It had gone live. Public. Oh no. By morning, the clip had been reshared 3 million times. Is this Leo Donovan's secret lover? Fashion designer posts intimate video of billionaire CEO. Is this a publicity stunt or something more? And Jasmine Leclerc's world exploded. The glass screen slipped from Jasmine's hand and hit the floor with a dull thud. She didn't flinch. She couldn't move. Her Instagram, once a modest collection of mood boards, stitched seams, and behind-the-scenes studio clips, was now a war zone of red hearts, fire emojis, and suspiciously aggressive speculation. Style confidential. Who is Jasmine Leclerc, and how is she this close to Leo Donovan? Exposing Theolites. You don't accidentally post a video like that. Tech Watch Daily. Donovan's been MIA since 2022. Who the hell is this designer? The photo was already being called intimate, though it showed nothing but a man tired, shirtless, vulnerable, his privacy undone, and Jasmine's career unraveling. She sank onto the edge of her bed, pulling the too-tight gown over her knees. The beads scratched her thighs, each a reminder of what she'd hoped this night would be: validation, visibility, the start of something real. Instead, she was trending for all the wrong reasons. Somewhere across Milan, the rightful owner of the viral image was eerily calm. Leo Donovan sat in the back of a black SUV with the pink phone unlocked on his lap. His profile was sharp in the morning sun, brows furrowed, jaw clenched, the muscle twitching like an unsent message. He should have been furious. He should have called legal, throttled PR, screamed, but he hadn't. Not yet. He watched the looped clip one last time, then opened Jasmine's most recent messages. Not to snoop, but to find out who this woman really was. She'd left a dozen frantic voicemails. Please don't sue me. I swear it was an accident. I don't even know how it uploaded. Maybe some autosync. Mr. Donovan. I'm so sorry. Her voice cracked like silk, stretched too tight. Oddly, she hadn't once tried to use the scandal to her advantage. Not in the captions. Not in the tags. Not in any of her public-facing content. Leo tapped his thumb against the screen. Most people leaked him on purpose. She seemed to be falling apart. And yet, the part of him that should be scalded with rage felt only curiosity. New York City. 72 hours later, Jasmine tried not to flinch as the elevator doors opened to the minimalist showroom of her design studio. Her assistants went silent the second she stepped in. No music. No chatter. Only wide eyes and the metallic rustle of pins being dropped into a tray. "Hi," she said, pretending her voice didn't tremble. "How's the mock-up for the autumn line?" One of them, Casey, blinked like she'd just seen a ghost. Henrik Stahl pulled out of the panel. Said he doesn't want Tailored affiliated with the brand while there's, quote, personal impropriety. Okay. Jasmine's stomach twisted. He was never funding us, she whispered. No, but he was moderating your showcase, Casey replied. Now the buyers are pulling too. Silence. No one dared meet her eyes. She turned and walked into her office, shut the door, and let her head fall to the desk. The email came at 2:08 p.m. sharp. From Leo Donovan. Subject: Let's talk. Body: You have something of mine. I think it's time we fix that. Tomorrow. 4 p.m. I'll come to you. Beneath it, his digital signature glowed like heat through glass. Jasmine reread it 3 times. No anger. No demands. Just 5 cold, clipped sentences that felt more like strategy than conversation. She told herself it was fine. That she'd wear something neutral. Apologize again. Give back the phone. Accept her humiliation with grace. She did not expect Leo Donovan to walk into her showroom the next day like a slow-burning hurricane. He arrived precisely on time, dressed in an ash-gray suit that fit like it had been algorithmically tailored to perfection. His eyes, ice blue and unreadable, swept the room like a threat. Everyone stopped breathing. Miss Leclerc? He said, not unkindly, but with the tonal control of a man who didn't like surprises. Jasmine stood, heart in her throat. She'd imagined this meeting 100 different ways, but none of those versions involved him being this tall or this quiet. "Yes. Thank you for coming," she said, offering his phone like a peace treaty. He didn't take it right away. Just looked at her, really looked, head tilted, gaze sliding from her trembling fingers to the smudge of concealer below her eye. "You look tired," he murmured. She blinked. "Excuse me?" "Not an insult. Just curious if you always work this hard." Jasmine opened her mouth, then closed it. She handed him the phone. He took it, slipping it into his jacket. Their fingers never touched, and yet it felt like contact. "Did you do it on purpose?" he asked softly, once they were alone. "No." Jasmine's voice was steady now. "I wish I had. At least then, I'd be famous for something intentional." A twitch of amusement touched his lips. "And yet, here you are. Trending. Blacklisted," she corrected. "Same difference." He watched her, then gestured at a sketch on her desk. It was bold, sculptural, ambitious. "A risk." "You did this?" he asked. "Yes." Leo looked down at the rendering, then back at her. "You're better than the headlines." And before she could find the right reply, he added, "Which is why I'm not suing you. In fact, I'm considering something else entirely." Jasmine's breath hitched. "What?" He looked at her again longer, more carefully, as if measuring her silence. "An offer." Chapter 2. A billionaire walks into a runway show. The crowd murmured like wind through velvet. Somewhere backstage, Jasmine's team rushed under pressure. Last-minute hem fixes, models in staggered lineup, hair sprayed to architectural perfection. She stood at the edge of the chaos, invisible in plain sight, pressing a trembling hand to her clipboard as her name echoed through the air. Leclerc debuting in 5. Final sequence. Flame chiffon. Her throat was tight. New York Fashion Week was the dream. The kind with sharp teeth and flashing cameras, where a single misstep could end everything. Especially now after the Leo Donovan debacle. Especially when the media still whispered about her scandal louder than her stitching. Jasmine inhaled through her nose. Steady. Professional. This was her last chance to prove she wasn't just an algorithmic accident of virality. "You okay?" murmured Casey at her side. "I'm fine," she lied. But then something shifted in the room. A ripple in the atmosphere. Heads turned. Photographers whispered. Even models paused, mid-stride. Jasmine followed their gaze and her heart stalled. Leo Donovan had walked into her show. No security entourage. No cameras trailing him. Just one man in obsidian black, tailored, lean, dangerous. His presence drew silence like gravity, like shadow. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. He sat in the front row without asking. She should have been flattered. Or furious. Or something. But she felt only the dry tick of her pulse behind her ears. Was this revenge? A subtle, public humiliation? He didn't look vindictive. Just observant. And when the lights dimmed and the first model stepped out in violet silk sliced with kinetic angles, his gaze didn't waver. Not once. Jasmine stopped watching the runway and watched him instead. How his fingers tapped once on his knee, twice, in rhythm. How he tilted his head when the third model turned. How he narrowed his eyes, not in judgment, but analysis. It wasn't until the final dress, her flame chiffon finale piece, a silhouette of molten color and sculpted trauma, that he blinked, that he leaned forward. And when the model pivoted, the room exploded into applause. All except him. He didn't clap, but he stood, and nodded once. At her. After the show, Jasmine braced herself backstage. He would vanish like he always did. She wouldn't see him again. She'd spend the next week obsessing over that nod and what it meant. Or didn't. But as she stepped through the heavy curtain to catch her breath, he was there. Waiting. "Impressive," Leo said, his voice low and unhurried. "Especially under pressure." "You mean after the scandal you're still pretending wasn't your fault?" she replied, voice taut with disbelief. His brow lifted a fraction. "Wasn't my fault either." "You didn't stop it." I didn't cause it. She crossed her arms, the satin of her sleeve whispering as it tightened over her forearm. Why are you here? He didn't answer right away. Then, because I needed to know if the woman who survived a global embarrassment with grace could actually deliver something worthy of attention. Her breath caught. And? You exceeded expectation. Jasmine turned her face away, hiding the swell of anger and heat in her cheeks. Congratulations, he added. You have my attention now. She turned back to him slowly. Is this how you test people? Drag them into scandal, destroy their peace, then sit front row at their redemption arc? Something flickered behind his eyes, dark and sharp, like glass under snow. I came because I admire your resilience. And your vision. I want to work with you. A beat of silence. Then, excuse me? He stepped closer, close enough for her to catch the subtle scent of bergamot and dark spice. The expensive kind, the understated kind. I'm developing a tactile interface for wearable tech, he said. Your designs have the emotional voltage I'm missing. I need someone who understands shape, movement, sensation. I need a partner with vision. Jasmine started. So, you came to my show, after publicly breaking my career, to offer me a job? He corrected her, calm as frost. An investment. A partnership. If you want it? Her lips parted but no sound came. Her chest swelled with too many emotions at once. And what do you want in return? She asked finally. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Trust. For a full 10 seconds, Jasmine said nothing. Not yes. Not no. Just silence. Because trust wasn't a word people like Leo Donovan threw around lightly. Or casually. He said it like a test, like he was daring her to flinch first. She didn't. Trust? She said finally, voice smooth but low, coming from a man who hasn't given a real interview in 4 years? Leo tilted his head, amused. I don't give interviews. I offer alliances. Her fingers twitched at her sides. What kind of alliance? He slipped one hand into his pocket. The other, still holding the program for her show, creased at the edges, like he'd actually studied it. His voice dropped to something intimate, dangerous. I'll fund your next line. Full autonomy, but I want a creative seat. I need a physical design partner for an innovation I haven't shared publicly yet. Jasmine blinked. You mean you want a fashion designer to help you build tech? Not fashion. Sensory intelligence. You create emotion through fabric. I need that intelligence built into wearable code. She stared at him, as if trying to translate a language only he spoke. Why me? He didn't hesitate. Because you don't just make beautiful clothes, Jasmine. You make them feel. You make people feel seen in their bodies. And because when the world turned on you, you didn't sell out. You shut up and sewed. His words hung in the air like heat after a summer storm. She swallowed. What's the catch? She asked. There's always a catch, he agreed, eyes unreadable. You'll sign an NDA thicker than your sketchbook. The work will be confidential. And you'll need to split time between your studio and my lab in Palo Alto. His stomach dropped. California? For 12 weeks, he said. Think of it as a creative residency. Jasmine paced a slow circle around him, half to breathe, half to think. Her heels clicked softly against the polished floor, echoing in the empty backstage hall. She wasn't someone who got offers like this. Not from billionaires. Not after scandals. And not with this much riding on it. 12 weeks. Leo Donovan. Co-creation. Secrets. Silicon Valley. Do I get final say over anything with my name on it? She asked carefully. He nodded. You will. And you'll own part of the tech IP if it succeeds. That surprised her. You'd give me equity? I don't partner with people I plan to control. I partner with people who make me better. It should have flattered her. Instead, it unsettled her. Because this wasn't just a business offer. It felt like he was already inside her mind, already sensing the fractures she kept hidden. Her imposter syndrome, her anxiety, her desperate desire to be more than a pretty headline. Leo Donovan had mapped her like code. She turned toward the curtain and peered out. The room was emptying now. Influencers, buyers, and critics were trickling out, many glancing back with curiosity, some even with reluctant admiration. Her name would still be in their mouths tomorrow, but maybe for the right reasons. When she turned back to face him, he was watching her again, like she was a puzzle with one last piece missing. "Do you believe in redemption arcs?" she asked softly. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture eased. "I believe in recursion," he said. "You don't start over. You loop back smarter." A pause. Then he held out a card, embossed, no email, no phone number, just a name and a private address. "You have 48 hours," he said. Then he walked away, vanishing behind the curtain like smoke through silk. That night, Jasmine lay awake in bed, the card beside her pillow like a lit match. Vanessa had called twice. She didn't answer. Not tonight. She stared at the ceiling, the shadows of Manhattan dancing across the plaster as horns wailed in the distance. Every instinct told her to run, to say no, to keep stitching small and safe. But Leo Donovan had just offered her a new world, and this time, maybe, she wouldn't flinch first. Chapter 3. Enemies in Silk and Silicon. The moment Jasmine signed the NDA, the air around her changed. Not just the contract itself, though, that had been 10 pages of dense legal code that screamed, "You are entering a world you do not control." But something else. A shift in tone, in texture. Her name now lived inside Leo Donovan's private world, his labs, his strategies, his silence. And the industry noticed. Not publicly, of course. No one from Leo's circle ever announced partnerships. But the undercurrent in the fashion elite had shifted. Whispers floated down Fifth Avenue and through showroom corridors. "She's with Donovan now? They say it's a tech collab, sure. She's just riding the scandal wave." Still, she threw herself into the work. In Leo's Palo Alto lab, an austere glass building tucked inside a grove of redwoods, Jasmine found herself in a strange new terrain. Rooms full of engineers who blinked at her sketches like they were alien glyphs. Code whispered across screens in languages she couldn't parse. But Leo had cleared space for her. Literally. A minimalist design studio, all white walls, raw linen mannequins, a sunlit wall for sketching. He called it the texture room. "Why texture?" she'd ask. "Because it's what I can't code," he'd said simply. "It's what only you can translate." And slowly, she began to, layer by layer, thread by thread. She mapped pressure sensors along seam lines, studied how fabric changed under motion, experimented with responsive weaves. For the first time in weeks, she felt focused, grounded. Until Henrik Stahl called. The text arrived mid-morning, like a bomb tucked in a silk envelope. "Henrik Stahl. Heard about the Palo Alto leap. Let's talk. You're playing a dangerous game, Jas. And I still have your sketches." Her blood ran cold. She hadn't spoken to Henrik since Milan. Their last exchange had been awkward but harmless, or so she'd thought. He'd posed as a friend, someone who understood the pressures of visibility, of navigating both fashion and tech. He'd praised her instinct, even offered her a panel seat at his tailored XAI symposium before pulling it after the scandal. She never expected he'd become this dangerous. She called him, "What do you mean, you have my sketches?" He chuckled, low and slippery. "From that Dropbox link you sent me, remember? Back when we were still friendly? I never." "Oh, come on. You wanted feedback." "You asked?" Jasmine's fingers trembled against the phone. She remembered the conversation now back in Milan, glass of champagne in one hand, nerves fraying, trying to impress him. He'd asked to see some of her development pieces. She'd sent him a temp link. Unprotected. "You promised you deleted that." "I lied." "Henrik, you're in bed with Donovan now," he said, voice tightening. "I can't afford to let that go unchallenged." "This isn't a war," she snapped. "Oh, it is," he replied. "You just haven't realized which side you're on." That night, Jasmine barely slept. Her limbs ached from tension, her thoughts chasing themselves in cruel loops. She didn't tell Leo, not yet. Pride, shame, and fear tangled too tightly in her chest. Instead, she returned to the lab the next morning and buried herself in work. But the damage had begun. The first red flag came from The Cut, a low-level editorial post, anonymous sources claiming that Jasmine's new designs bore suspicious resemblance to AI-generated silhouettes. Tailored had teased months ago. A coincidence? Maybe. But she knew better. Henrik was poisoning the water. And the fashion world, already slow to forgive, faster to wound, began to whisper again. She's stealing tech. Leo's protecting her. She's just another face in the algorithm. In the middle of it all, Vanessa called, "Hey, big sis." Her voice sang through the speaker, all too sweet. "You've been busy." Jasmine froze. Her sister hadn't called in weeks, not since Milan. "What do you want?" Jasmine asked wearily. Vanessa laughed. "Wow. Defensive much? I'm under Ziege, Vanessa. I don't have time for games." "Neither do I," she replied. "So I'll make this fast. Henrik asked me to consult on something. Said he got inspiration from your archives. Wanted my take." Jasmine's blood chilled. "You're working with him?" "He offered me credit. And visibility. Something you never did. I kept you in every pitch deck. I never shut you out." "You always shut me out, Jas. In every room. Every spotlight. You think being the designer makes you the only one with ideas." Jasmine's voice cracked. "You gave him my work?" "I didn't give him anything he didn't already have," Vanessa said flatly. Click. By the time Jasmine reached the end of the call, she couldn't feel her own hands. Henrik had her sketches. Vanessa had helped him twist the knife. And her alliance with Leo? Balanced on the edge of a very thin blade. Jasmine didn't tell Leo everything. Not yet. She wanted to. God, she did. But something deep inside her, some old scar carved by years of subtle erasure, of being underestimated by her own family, held her tongue. Telling Leo would mean exposing the full truth, that she had been careless with her sketches, and worse, that her own sister had helped weaponize them. And what would Leo do? Pull the plug? Assume she'd compromised him? So instead, she worked harder. Longer. By the fourth sleepless night, she had redesigned 2 entire prototypes, integrated his pressure-sensitive fiber into a new pleated coat that shimmered like heat waves under motion, and lost 5 pounds from stress and coffee. Still, the whispers grew louder. The backlash wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It slithered, elegant, and cruel. A fashion blogger published a side-by-side comparison, Jasmine's unreleased spring coat and a tailored concept mock-up from a month prior. Never mind that the tailored version was generated, that the cut was generic, that fabric couldn't even drape that way. The damage was done. Jasmine's inbox flooded with cancelled appointments. A buyer from Bloomingdale's ghosted her. A Vogue junior editor politely asked for a pause on our profile pitch for the March issue. And still Leo said nothing. He worked beside her in silence, occasionally reviewing a 3D render or adjusting code on a projection screen. Always precise. Always focused. But not once did he ask if she was okay. Until she broke. It happened in the texture room. She'd spent 6 hours fitting a prototype jacket, only to realize one of the embedded sensors had shorted. It crackled with static under her fingers, shorting the silk. "I can't," she choked, ripping the fabric away from the mannequin. "I can't fix this if I'm fighting the whole damn world every day. Henrik, the press, buyers who think I'm your little scandal puppet." Leo looked up. She was flushed, trembling. Her mouth refused to stop moving. "And now my sister's working with the same man who's stealing my sketches." "Leo stille? What?" Jasmine froze. It was out. All of it. She tried to laugh it off. "I was going to tell you." "When?" he said, quietly. "I needed time." "You needed time while someone you trusted leaked proprietary sketches to my biggest competitor. It wasn't intentional, Leo. You didn't sign the NDA to protect me. You signed it to protect the product, the lab, the IP." His voice wasn't angry, but it was cold, calculated, each word surgically detached. She flinched. "I didn't leak anything, but you didn't protect it either." That cut deeper than shouting ever could. She dropped her gaze, shame pulsing beneath her skin. "I trusted Vanessa," she whispered, "and I was naive." Leo exhaled slowly, pinching the bridge of his nose. We're too far in. I can't have this unravel. You think I wanted to? She shot back, her voice cracking. You think I haven't killed myself trying to keep it together while the industry treats me like some tech billionaire's spoiled girlfriend? He looked at her, then truly looked. And something changed in his expression. He wasn't just seeing chaos anymore. He was seeing the cost. That night, Leo called a late meeting with his legal team. Jasmine sat outside the glass conference room, watching his silhouette move like a shadow across the backlit whiteboard. She couldn't hear the conversation, but she saw the moment his shoulders slumped. She saw him reach for his temples. And for the first time, she wondered if he was scared too. The next morning, Leo showed up with 2 cappuccinos, handed her one without speaking, and pulled a new prototype jacket out of a sealed garment bag. I made some changes, he said. Jasmine blinked. You redesigned the sensor grid? Rerouted the load centers? Hid the pressure filaments in the hemline instead of the sleeve? She felt it smooth, weightless, seamless. It's perfect, she breathed. No, he said. It's better than perfect. She looked up. He was watching her, not like a threat, not like a liability, but like a co-architect of something neither of them had words for yet. Let's finish it, he said. And for the first time in weeks, Jasmine smiled. Chapter 4. The proposal no, not that kind. Jasmine sat cross-legged on the floor of Leo Donovan's Palo Alto guest house, surrounded by bolts of ivory-suiting wool, spools of graphene-threaded filament, and a strange peace she hadn't felt in weeks. The house was minimalist, but warm concrete softened with walnut and linen, enormous windows draped in sheer fog. She called it the fortress, though Leo rarely stayed there. He preferred the lab, the silence, the machinery that didn't betray him. Tonight, though, it was just the 2 of them, Jasmine barefoot in leggings and an oversized hoodie. Leo beside her, sleeves rolled, his jaw dark with stubble, his hands steady as he programmed a sensor hub the size of a thumbnail. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Their collaboration had slipped into something intuitive. He would gesture. She would sketch. She would murmur about friction in fabric, and he would mutter back equations like spells. Their brains had begun to sync like code, and it terrified her. Because working with Leo wasn't just professional anymore. It was personal. Too personal. So, he said at last, placing the hub into her palm, let's talk distribution. Jasmine blinked. Distribution? I want you to headline the soft launch collection. She sat up straighter. Leo. He looked at her. It'll be your name. Your label. But embedded with our interface. 5 pieces. All built with haptic feedback, pressure-adjusting tech, and adaptive thermal thread. You want me to debut it? At Paris Fashion Week. Her breath stopped. That's in 3 months. I know. You're asking me to what? Become the face of fashion-integrated tech overnight, at the most elite show in the world. He said nothing. She stood up, heart pounding. Leo, that's not a small ask. That's career suicide if it goes wrong. It's your world bleeding into mine, and I'm the one who'll pay if it fails. Leo rose too, slowly. Not menacing, but centered. Grounded. I'm asking you to co-found something. She froze. He stepped closer, his voice a hush of heat. I'm not offering a spotlight. I'm offering a legacy. Yours. Mine. Integrated. You design what the world sees. I build what it feels. She didn't realize she was holding her breath until he reached for her hand not to touch, but to place the sensor back into her palm. A pulse of warmth glowed from it, barely visible. A heartbeat in tech form. This is the future, Jasmine, he said softly, and I want to build it with you. The air in the room thickened, not with tension but something deeper, denser. Desire. Maybe. Not the kind that burned hot and fast, but the kind that burrowed quietly under the ribs and bloomed in silence. Jasmine stepped back, her fingers curling around the sensor. You build tech, she said carefully, but I build trust in the body, in the garment, and the world doesn't trust you. Leo. They think you're cold, remote, untouchable. A pause. Are you? He didn't answer right away. Then, would it matter if I said yes? Her heart thudded. It would to me. He didn't touch her. Not yet. But something in his gaze shifted less armor, more ache. I've been burned, he said, voice stripped of all calculation. You know that. So have I, she said quietly. Mine just came from the people who shared my blood. They stood in silence, watching each other like two cliffs across a sea. Then he said the thing she didn't expect. I want to protect your work. She blinked. You already invested in it. No, he said. I mean really protect it. Legally. Creatively. Digitally. He handed her a slim leather folio. Inside, a partnership contract. A founding structure. Co-ownership clauses. And at the bottom, Millionaire'S Technologies. Her breath caught. This isn't just a proposal, she whispered. No, he said. Not that kind. Not yet. A beat. But it's the first stitch. Jasmine didn't speak for a full minute. She just stared at the contract, fingers grazing the name etched in matte ink, Millionaire'S Technologies. Her name and his, woven together like a brand new thread through the seams of her life. It was terrifying. It was thrilling. Why now? She asked finally, folding the folio shut, but keeping it pressed against her chest. Why trust me this much after everything? Leo exhaled, slow and deliberate. He turned away, walking toward the windows that looked out onto the shadowed grove of redwoods, swaying gently under a silver moon. I watched what Henrik did, he said. I saw the sketches. I read the articles. And I waited. Waited for what? For you to panic. For you to beg me to save your brand. To cry. Denu. Play the victim. He glanced back at her. You didn't. Jasmine leaned against the edge of the table, spine straightening. So you're rewarding me for suffering in silence? No, Leo said. I'm acknowledging that you didn't break. She opened her mouth, but couldn't find a retort. He moved closer again, his expression unreadable, voice gentler now. Do you have any idea how rare it is to find someone who can weather fire like that and still create something honest? Jasmine swallowed. You trust me now, she said. But what happens when things get ugly again? He considered that. Then I'll trust you to tell me the truth. And I'll give you the same. You mean that? His eyes locked with hers. Yes. She believed him, which scared her more than the contract. They didn't sign it that night. Instead, they poured 2 glasses of white wine and sat on the cold floor again, surrounded by fabric swatches and circuit boards and 1,000 unspoken questions. Do you ever regret it? She asked quietly. All the secrecy? The isolation? Leo looked down at the glass in his hand. Sometimes. What happened? She asked. Before me. He hesitated. Then. Her name was Serena. Abiotech CEO. We got engaged. She stole the neural input prototype and sold it to Henrik. He beat me to market. Tanked my valuation by half. Took her with him. Jasmine's chest tightened. You loved her? He didn't flinch. Yes. But I loved the idea of her more than the woman she actually was. There was no bitterness in his voice, just resignation. A clean scar. I wasn't enough, he said. And she knew it. You weren't controllable, Jasmine corrected. He looked at her. You felt that too? I've lived that. They talked until 2 a.m. Voices growing soft, slow, intimate. The kind of intimacy that's built not from touch but from shared truth. When Jasmine finally stood to leave, she paused at the door, the contract still tucked under her arm. You know, she said, glancing over her shoulder, this whole co-founder thing? Yes? If you try to micromanage my embroidery team, I will fight you. A rare smile ghosted his lips. Noted. And if I design a jacket that makes your sensors obsolete? Then I'll build new ones. She paused, more seriously this time. I don't want to be your shadow, Leo. He stepped forward, his gaze soft but steady. You were never in mine, he said. You were walking beside me. I just hadn't noticed until you outran me. Her throat thickened. Good night, Leo. Bond knew it, Jasmine. The next morning, she signed the contract, Not because she needed his help, but because she was ready to stop surviving and start building something that could outlast them both. Together. Chapter 5. The Tension Beneath the Seams. The press release dropped on a rainy Tuesday, slipped into the digital bloodstream like a whispered secret no one could ignore. Donovan Leclerc Technologies announces debut collection, Touch Code. Paris Fashion Week. 5 garments. 1 revolution. By noon, Jasmine's phone vibrated every 30 seconds. Emails, feature requests, press inquiries. Influencers she hadn't spoken to since design school were sliding into her DMs with emojis and false warmth. Former buyers suddenly reconsidered, and Vogue called, not a junior editor this time, the editor-in-chief. But even as her public life burst back into bloom, Jasmine felt the quiet pressure building underneath, like the tension stitched into silk, visible only when it moved. Because the collection, it wasn't finished. And Leo was changing. Not dramatically, not visibly, but subtly, like a man learning how to breathe someone else's air for the first time in years. She found him one morning in the texture room, staring at her sketches from the original flame chiffon finale piece. The page was worn, edges softened by thumbprints. He traced the folds with a fingertip like he was trying to memorize the movement. "You're thinking too hard," she said softly. "I'm thinking precisely enough," he replied, but his voice lacked its usual sharpness. She crossed the room, nudging his arm with hers. "What's going on?" He glanced at her, then looked away, jaw tightening. "The last time I launched something personal," he said, "it destroyed me." Jasmine stilled. He rarely spoke about the Serena fallout, but she could feel the phantom of that betrayal in the room now, its cold hands on his back, its breath in the corners. "You think I'll do the same?" she asked quietly. "No." "Then what is it?" Leo exhaled and said nothing for a moment. Then, "This is the first thing I've built that didn't start from vengeance." Her breath caught, and in that second, she saw it beneath the marble in silence and brilliance. Leo Donovan was afraid of hope. Afraid that this fragile, strange, intoxicating thing they were making might be too good to survive the world. And yet, they worked. Jasmine designed a coat that could heat in cold and cool in heat, its fabric adjusting to the wearer's body chemistry. Leo embedded sensors that mapped emotional spikes into subtle color shifts. Anger warmed the thread, grief darkened it. They built poetry from pressure plates, created intimacy in zippers, trust in tailoring. It was magic, disguised as fashion. But all magic has a cost. The first sign of trouble arrived the week before the Paris preview. A leak. Someone had posted a grainy image of one of their unreleased jackets, the Cascade Trench with the emotion-reactive lining on a private Discord for emerging designers. The image wasn't clear, but it was real, and only 3 people outside their core lab team had seen it. Jasmine's stomach sank. Vanessa. She confronted her sister in their shared Brooklyn brownstone, that weekend, an echo of childhood comforts twisted by adult betrayal. Vanessa stood in the kitchen, stirring oat milk into her espresso with practiced indifference. "You always assume the worst of me." "Because you keep proving me right," Jasmine snapped, slapping a printout of the leaked photo on the counter. "You were at the lab 3 weeks ago. That's when this was taken." Vanessa didn't even look at the image. "Maybe you shouldn't let strangers roam your so-called innovation kingdom." Jasmine's voice sharpened. "You're not a stranger. You're my sister. And you're the one who gave Henrik my sketches. I gave him a concept. One of my concepts, by the way. I helped you shape that trench before you even knew what haptics were. That doesn't give you the right to sabotage me." "No," Vanessa said coldly. "But it evens the score." "What score?" Vanessa's mouth twisted. "You've always walked 2 steps ahead of me, Jas. Every time. Even when we were kids, you got praise. I got your leftovers. You got Mom's attention. You got Dad's patience. You got Leo's name on your press releases." Jasmine staggered back like she'd been slapped. "You think I'm using him?" she whispered. "I know you are," Vanessa hissed. "The difference is, you've convinced yourself it's love." Jasmine left without another word, the echo of her sister's bitterness burning in her ears. But something had been seeded, something ugly, Not because it was true, but because part of her feared it might be. Back in Palo Alto, Leo sensed it instantly. "You're quiet," he said as they fitted the final prototype on the model. The jacket shimmered under soft lights, liquid graphite shifting across the seams. "Just tired," Jasmine lied. But he wasn't fooled. He watched her fingers tremble as she buttoned the collar. He didn't press. But later that night, as she stood alone on the terrace, watching fog spill over the mountains, he came up behind her and slipped his coat over her shoulders. Warmth bloomed. Not from Tech. From him. And in that silence, wrapped in a garment that didn't belong to her, Jasmine realized something that terrified her more than any betrayal. She was falling in love. Jasmine hadn't intended to fall asleep on the terrace. But somewhere between the weight of Leo's coat and the hush of the coastal night, she drifted into a sleep so soft, it felt like surrender. She woke to the scent of roasted espresso and sandalwood. And to Leo, setting a steaming mug beside her curled form, "You need better habits," he murmured. Jasmine blinked against the morning sun, hair tangled, voice hoarse. "You're one to talk." A flicker of amusement danced in his eyes. "I don't sleep. I reboot." She smiled at that, but it didn't reach her eyes. Because even in the quiet intimacy of that moment, the truth still sat heavy on her chest. Her sister had betrayed her. Again. And this time, it wasn't just personal. It was professional. And Leo didn't know yet. He noticed her distraction as they reviewed final prototypes for Paris. The silk blend trench was nearly complete. The suit with embedded adaptive compression panels had been signed off. The kinetic lace gown, her personal masterpiece, was hanging under blackout cloth, waiting for its debut. But Jasmine wasn't present. Not the way she usually was. She nodded at suggestions she would have challenged. She brushed over minor flaws she would have dissected. She wasn't sketching. She was withdrawing. By afternoon, Leo finally asked, "Did I do something wrong?" Jasmine flinched. "No." He stood, crossed the space. "Then what is it?" A long pause. Then she whispered, "The leak." He stilled. "I confronted Vanessa," she said, voice tight. She didn't deny it. She's still in contact with Henrik. And she said ugly things. About me. About us. Leo's gaze darkened. Jasmine forced herself to meet his eyes. "She thinks I'm using you." His expression didn't change. But his body did. His shoulders pulled taut, jaw ticking once. "Do you believe her?" he asked carefully. Jasmine shook her head. "No. But I believe that part of me still wants to prove I deserve this. That I didn't just stumble into your orbit because of a phone mistake and a viral post." Leo didn't speak for a long time. Then, "I didn't fall in love with an accident." Jasmine's breath stopped. "What?" Leo stepped closer, gaze searching. "I didn't mean to say it like that. You said you." "I did." Her heart pounded. He moved slowly, reaching to brush a curl from her face, but stopped short, waiting. She leaned in. Let him. His fingers grazed her cheek, and she closed her eyes. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I," he replied. "That doesn't mean it's not real." They didn't kiss. Not yet. But the air between them changed. Grew thick with things unsaid but felt palms too close, glances too long, breath held at the wrong moments. They worked side by side that night, and it felt like threading electricity through cloth. But as they packed the last crate for Paris, Leo's phone buzzed. His eyes flicked to the screen, and something in his face hardened. "What is it?" Jasmine asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, "Henrik's making a move." She straightened. "What kind of move?" "He's applying for a provisional patent on tech he didn't design." "Yours." "Ours." "The garment we just finished." Leo's voice was even, but tight. Jasmine felt nausea rise. "How did he?" Leo looked at her then, his expression unreadable. And for the first time since Milan, she felt it. Doubt. Not hers. His. Just a flicker. But it was enough. "I need to know," he said. Everything Vanessa saw. Everything she could have passed to him. Jasmine's eyes stung. You think I lied to you? I think you were trying to protect someone who didn't deserve it. Silence. Then, quieter. You're not the only one with trust issues, Leo. They didn't sleep that night. And not because of work. Because the fragile stitch of trust they'd built beautiful, intricate, vulnerable was beginning to strain, and neither of them knew yet whether it would hold or tear. Chapter 6. Sabotage and Silence. The private jet to Paris was silent. Not qui est silent. The kind of silence that pressed against your chest, made your skin crawl with awareness. Jasmine sat near the window, sketchpad open but untouched, her pen lying still in the crook of her hand. Leo sat across from her, laptop open, his expression carved from stone. They hadn't spoken in 3 hours. Not since he asked her calmly, surgically, if Vanessa could have leaked more than just a design. Not since she refused to cry in front of him. Not since the space between them became a tension field with no ground. The hum of the aircraft filled the silence, a background ache. Outside the window, clouds turned to ribbons as they sliced across the Atlantic. But Jasmine saw none of it. She was caught in the loop of his voice. I need to know what else you gave her. He hadn't meant it as an accusation, but it still felt like one, and it hurt more than any headline ever had. They arrived in Paris to a flurry of staff, press coordinators, and stylists waiting like wolves in lipstick and headsets. Jasmine let them descend, fitting, fluffing, fussing, while Leo handled customs and logistics with ruthless efficiency. He didn't speak to her beyond schedule confirmations. She didn't ask for more, but in her dressing room at the Hotel Le Meurice, alone with the final gowns and prototypes, Jasmine finally cracked. She opened the new black garment bag, the one meant for the final piece in the show. The kinetic lace gown. Her triumph. Inside was an imposter. The fabric was off. The cut was wrong. The tech wasn't there. Her heart stopped. She checked the tag. It bore Henrik's brand mark tailored to mimic her original design down to the hem. Her blood ran cold. She ripped open the second bag. Same thing. Vanessa hadn't just passed Henrik ideas. She had passed him the show. Leo's knock came at the worst possible moment. She opened the door, eyes wide, dress still in her hands. Look, she whispered. He took the gown from her, examined it in silence, then handed it back. We need to pull out of the show. What? Her voice cracked. No. This is sabotage, Jasmine. If we walk out there with these, we look like thieves. But we designed these first. Doesn't matter, Leo said grimly. Henrik leaked them to the press already. He'll control the narrative. You'll be called a copycat. I'll be called reckless. Jasmine stared at him, breath ragged. Then fight it. You're Leo Donovan. Fight him. I'm a businessman, he said, voice clipped. Not a martyr. Her knees went weak. So you're pulling funding, she whispered. You're leaving. His eyes didn't move. I can't protect this launch, he said. And I won't let us bleed for a battle we've already lost. Her chest caved. You promised you wouldn't disappear when it got hard. He hesitated, then turned away. That was his answer. By midnight, Leo was gone. The penthouse suite empty. His security team silent. And Jasmine sat alone on the bed, staring at the shredded sketches in her lap. Everything had unraveled. The brand, the trust, the love she hadn't even had the chance to name. She was humiliated, exposed, alone. Again. But this time, she wasn't going to run. Jasmine didn't cry. Not at first. Instead, she sat motionless in the darkened hotel suite, watching the Paris skyline blur through the lace curtains. Lights flickered across the Seine like a pulse she could no longer feel. Her body was numb, her soul taut, but her mind was a screaming, burning hive of thought. Leo had walked away. Vanessa had betrayed her again. And Henrik, he had everything. The launch, the media spin, the headlines, the smugness of a man who weaponized her own genius and branded it as his. Jasmine gripped the ruined gown in her hands, crushed the fabric to her chest, and whispered to the empty room, no. It wasn't defiance. Not yet. It was a promise. At dawn, she called Casey. Her assistant's voice was groggy, confused. "Jas, what are you okay?" "Get the backups," Jasmine said, standing in front of the mirror with a pair of scissors. "The real prototypes. From the trunk in the Brooklyn studio. You'll find the sealed crate under the drop cloth in the corner. Ship them overnight. Priority 1. Casey stammered, but Leo said, "Leo's not in this anymore." "But the show, we're still doing it." Casey paused, then said, "Okay, I'm on it." Jasmine hung up and began cutting. The dress she wore was Henrik's copy. She tore it apart, seam by seam, thread by thread. She deconstructed his lie with the calm precision of a woman who had nothing left to lose and everything left to prove. She worked without pause, fueled by rage and adrenaline and the brutal memory of being dismissed. By Leo. By Vanessa. By the world. The press the next morning was relentless. Tailored's new collection borrows from viral designer. Exclusive. Donovan. Leclerc. Launch cancelled. In Paris. Sister spill. Vanessa Leclerc to debut at Tech's fashion panel with Henrik Stahl. Jasmine read them all. She didn't flinch. She repainted her eyes with kohl, tied her curls back into a sleek, brutal bun, wore a razor-cut black suit stitched with programmable thread that shimmered when she moved. And when the producer of the Emergence Runway series offered to pull her from the live stream to minimize embarrassment, she said, "I'm not hiding. I'm resetting." At 8:37 p.m., 23 minutes before showtime, her phone buzzed. Leo Donovan. She stared at the screen for a long time, then let it go to voicemail. He left a message. "You made a mistake. I thought I was protecting you by pulling back. I didn't realize I was just protecting myself. You were never the liability, Jasmine. I was. I'm coming back. I don't care if it's too late. I'll prove it on your stage, not mine." She didn't cry, but her throat ached with something dangerous and soft. Still, she said nothing. Not yet. Backstage, the lights dimmed. The music thrummed deep, primal, haunting, and Jasmine Leclerc walked out. Alone. No billionaire. No sponsor. No tech titan behind her. Only truth, stitched in light and fury. And the world held its breath. Because what walked that runway wasn't just fashion. It was fire made wearable, emotion translated into fabric. And Jasmine? She was the architect of all of it. Chapter 7. The Silence That Screams. Paris would not forget the night Jasmine Leclerc walked the runway alone. Not because it was dramatic, not because it was bold, but because it was undeniable. The garment sculptural, kinetic, reactive, moved like emotion itself. One dress changed color with the model's heartbeat. Another shimmered with iridescence, reflecting the temperature of the air around it. The final piece, a fluid midnight capecoat laced with flickering light, responded to applause with subtle pulses along the spine. It was technological poetry, and she'd built it without him. When the final model exited, Jasmine stepped onto the runway, back straight, jaw set, her black suit catching the light with every stride. She didn't wave. She didn't bow. She stood there, in absolute silence. And the crowd roared. After the show, the world erupted. The reviews came in before she could even change out of her boots. Leclerc reinvents couture for the age of empathy. Le Monde. This is what wearable tech was always supposed to be. The Guardian. Where was Leo Donovan, and does it even matter? Fashion Tech Weekly. Her phone vibrated until the battery died. Her Instagram surged past 1 million followers overnight. And somewhere in the maelstrom, someone whispered that Leo Donovan had been seen entering the venue just 5 minutes too late. Back in her suite, Jasmine peeled off her suit and stood under a scalding shower until the steam choked her lungs. She felt empty, hollowed out by adrenaline. Her hands were blistered, her feet raw, her chest full of thunder. The win didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. And it was too quiet now. Too quiet without him. Leo didn't call that night. He didn't text. Didn't send flowers. Didn't burst through the doors with a grand apology. He did nothing. And for the first time since Milan, Jasmine wondered if that silence meant he'd given up, or if it meant he was letting her decide. He had, in fact, been there. Hidden beneath the archway of a column, backstage, dressed in black and stillness, he'd watched every moment of the show, from the first note of music to the closing silence. His heart had pounded not with pride but with regret, with longing, with awe. He had never felt so powerless, never loved something or someone so far out of reach. Back in his private suite, Leo turned on the television. It played footage from the runway. Jasmine's face, Jasmine's work, Jasmine standing alone while the world lit up in praise. He muted the sound and watched it again. And again, until the image blurred. Paris woke up to a new queen. Jasmine Leclerc's face was on every screen, every blog, every curated Power Woman reel. The footage of her finale walked silent, solo. Sovereign was already dubbed the Quiet Rebellion. Her DMs overflowed with admiration. Brands she once begged for internships were now offering full collaborations. 2 stylists from Balmain and Iris Van Herpen asked for private consultations. And yet beneath the noise, beneath the victory was still the silence. Leo's silence. Jasmine didn't let herself cry until the 4th interview was over. She'd done the morning circuit, Style TV, Techwear Weekly, Good Morning Europe. She'd smiled, nodded, talked about breaking boundaries and trusting her vision. But when the elevator doors closed on the way back to her suite, and she finally had no one watching, tears came. Slow at first, then hard. She wasn't crying because she missed him. She cried because she still wanted to tell him everything first. The reviews, the thrill, the terror, and she couldn't, because when he needed to stay, he left, and when she needed to fly, she'd done it alone. That wasn't something easily sewn back together. Downstairs in the lobby, Leo Donovan stood with a single hand in his coat pocket and a bouquet of white peonies in the other. He'd been standing there for 15 minutes. Not because he didn't know what to say, he knew too much, but because for the first time in years, his fear wasn't failure. It was vulnerability. He had walked into that showroom with algorithms and blueprints. She had given him feeling. He'd returned it with silence. Now, he didn't want forgiveness. He wanted a second chance to deserve her. The elevator doors opened. She stepped out and froze. They stared at each other like opposing magnets drawn together, but unsure if contact would spark or shatter. Leo took a breath, held out the flowers. "I'm late," he said, voice low. He noticed. Jasmine replied. "Too late?" She didn't answer. Not with words. But she took the flowers. And that was enough. For now. They sat on the edge of the fountain in the hotel courtyard, just past midnight. Neither in heels nor suits, neither in control. Just a woman with cracked nail polish and a man with bloodshot eyes. Jasmine broke the silence. "Why did you leave?" He stared at the water, at the flickering reflections. "Because I didn't know how to be there without breaking everything," he said. "I thought I had to protect the brand, the story, the outcome, and I forgot you weren't part of the story." His voice softened. "You were the story." Jasmine looked away. "I wanted to hate you. I would have let you," he said. She met his gaze. "But I didn't." A long breath passed between them. Leo reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Her handwriting, the original sketch of the flame chiffon gown, still faintly stained with graphite and espresso. "I've kept this in my jacket since Milan." She traced the edges with her fingertip, heart clenched. "I missed you," she whispered. "I missed everything with you," he said. And then finally he touched her, a hand over hers. Not a claim, not a possession, just presence, real, steady, and human. Chapter 8. Paris is always a good idea. Jasmine stood at the center of the old atelier, the one near Montmartre, where she'd once apprenticed at 19 sweeping floors, threading needles, stitching sleeves in silence. It smelled the same, of chalk dust and perfume and old ambition. This time, though, she wasn't the girl trying to prove she belonged. She was the woman they all wanted to be. And Leo Donovan had followed her there. Not into the building, not yet, but into the city. into her story. He hadn't asked for permission. He'd simply arrived. And he'd brought a stage with him. The invitation hit social media like a lightning strike. Donovan Leclerc, live demo. Marché d'art, numérique, bon PMM. What she made. What he learned. What they built together. Nobody knew what it meant. But the RSVP list filled within minutes. Editors. Engineers. Creators. Skeptics. The world had seen Jasmine's solo triumph. Now Leo was stepping into her arena not to reclaim the spotlight, but to reflect it. She found him backstage before the event, adjusting a prototype display on a custom mannequin, her trench coat, coated with a new emotional temperature matrix she hadn't designed. He turned when he heard her heels. Paused. "Didn't think you'd come early," he said. "I didn't come for the press," she said. He gave a small nod. "I came for you." His eyes met hers, quiet, tired, open. "You were right," he said. "I didn't trust anyone but myself for years. I thought that made me strong." She stepped closer. "You were surviving. But I wasn't living. Not until you." The air between them was soft now. No heat. No tension. Only understanding. "Leo," she said gently, "I'm not asking for perfect. I'm asking for presence." "You'll have it," he said. "Not just as your investor. Not as your co-founder. As the man who believes in your fire even when I'm scared of being burned." He reached into his inner coat pocket and pulled out a tablet. On the screen, a new schematic. One she hadn't seen. He turned it toward her. Her mouth parted as she read. Leclerc Core. Biometric Trust Protocol. Adaptive Calibration. Shared Authorship. Her name, embedded in the code. "This is my apology," he said. "And my proof." She looked up at him. "You're not just giving me credit," she whispered. "You're giving me ownership." He nodded. "You built the soul. I just found a way to hold it." At 4:02 p.m. The stage lights dimmed in the digital art marché, casting shadow and shimmer across the vaulted glass ceilings. The world leaned forward. And together, Jasmine Leclerc and Leo Donovan stepped into the light. Not rivals. Not just partners. Co-creators of something that had never existed before. The venue was unlike anything Paris had ever seen. Part gallery, part runway, part immersive theater. And in the center of it all stood Jasmine and Leo back to back beneath a shifting dome of light that mimicked Aurora Borealis, coded in real time by the ambient emotions of the audience. Their custom interface translated crowd energy, excitement, curiosity, even skepticism into color and kinetic shimmer across the space. It wasn't just fashion. It wasn't just tech. It was communion. Jasmine took the mic first. She was calm, poised, wrapped in her signature deep plum suit, its lining pulsing with biofeedback that mirrored her inner rhythm. Her voice, when it came, was silk over steel. "When I started designing, I thought clothing had one job: to protect the body. Then I realized it could do more. It could speak for us. It could listen when we forget how to ask. It could hold memory." She paused. "And then I met a man who taught machines to think but forgot what it meant to feel." The audience laughed gently. Even Leo smiled, head tilted in mock offense. "But he listened," Jasmine continued, gaze softening as she turned to face him, "and in the process, we built something together neither of us could have built alone." Leo stepped forward. He didn't use a script. Didn't use a screen. Just his voice low, measured, unarmored. "I used to think the world was a problem to solve, and that people's feelings, art, softness were distractions from progress." He glanced at her. "I was wrong." He turned back to the audience. What Jasmine created wasn't just wearable art. It was empathy you could touch. Clothing that remembers your grief. Fabric that adapts to joy. Armor that lets in light. A pause. And today, we give it to all of you. The lights dimmed. And the models walked out. Not strutting. Moving. Living. Each garment reacted in real time to the model's body. One gown rippled with soft heat when the wearer's pulse rose. A jacket lit up like fireflies as the model passed others, echoing proximity and tension And the final piece, Jasmine walked it herself. A minimalist white dress, cut on the bias, sleeveless and clean, with programmable thread that whispered text across the hem in slow scroll. The words? "I'm not afraid of silence anymore." The crowd stood. No one clapped at first. They just watched, held still in reverence. Then, an eruption of applause that shook the glass walls. Backstage, after the cameras had gone, Jasmine sat on a metal stool unlacing her boots when Leo knelt in front of her. "Don't get weird on me now," she teased. He ignored her tone, took her hand, looked at her not as a CEO, not as a co-founder, as a man in love. "I want to build more than a company with you," he said. "More than code. More than legacy." Her throat caught. "Leo, don't say yes," he whispered. "Not yet. Just know I'm here. Fully. Without conditions. Without fear." She squeezed his hand. "I'm not saying yes," she replied, smiling through tears. "I'm saying finally." The headlines the next day read, "She walked alone." He followed her home. Donovan and Leclerc redefined the future and romance. The collection that made the world feel again. And beneath it all, the world whispered, "They're not just building fashion. They're building forever." Chapter 9. Brand New Love. Jasmine woke up in silence. Not the kind that follows pain. Not the kind that follows fear. But the kind that follows peace. Sunlight spilled across the cotton sheets of their quiet flat in the 7th arrondissement. White walls, olive trees on the balcony, the distant echo of church bells. For once, there were no missed calls. No sabotage. No contracts waiting in her inbox. Just Leo, in the kitchen, humming quietly to himself as he stirred coffee and scrolled through sketches she'd left scattered on the marble counter. He was wearing one of her robes. It was too short, and she smiled so hard it hurt. 3 months had passed since Paris Fashion Week. In that time, they hadn't just launched Touch Code. They'd launched Le Don, a company that didn't fit into traditional categories. Part fashion house, part innovation lab, part emotion, mapping studio. Their first showroom in Soho was already under construction. Every item would be made to order, coded with personal biometric profiles and sustainable thread. People called it pretentious. People called it impossible. They called it home. But building a brand with someone you loved? That was a different challenge. Because no matter how deeply they connected, how seamlessly Jasmine's vision and Leo's precision intertwined, there were still fault lines. Still days when Jasmine couldn't stand his quiet. Still nights when Leo couldn't make sense of her storms. But they were learning how to fight without cutting, how to listen without solving, how to hold space even when their instincts wanted to fix. In the lab, they were equals. At home, they were trying to learn how to be soft. Jasmine sat at the long table one evening, hands coated in dye, experimenting with new thermochromic pigments, when Leo came in from a board meeting. "You skipped the investor dinner," he said. She didn't look up. "I know. They asked about you. Did you tell them I'm not a prop?" Leo exhaled, crossed to her slowly. "I told them you're the reason we exist." She stilled, finally met his eyes, and saw a genuine apology. "No performance." She wiped her hands and touched his chest. "I don't want to be the heart of the brand," she said softly. "I want to be half of it." He nodded. "You are." That weekend, they hosted their first Le Don listening session, a private showing for collaborators where nothing was for sale. No cameras. Just conversation. Emotion. Energy. A young woman tried on Jasmine's new jacket, a warm cream cocoon piece that vibrated gently against the sternum, with a steadying rhythm. The woman froze when she felt it, then began to cry. "My mother used to tap her hand on my back like that when I was anxious," she said. Jasmine's throat closed. Leo took her hand behind the curtain and whispered, "This is why we build." She nodded, blinking fast. "I know." That night, in their kitchen, he pulled out an envelope from the drawer. "I had this drafted before the launch," he said, placing it gently in front of her. She frowned, opened it. It was an official co-ownership deed for their New York flagship space. Both names. Equal stake. No vesting. No contingencias. Just trust. Jasmine looked up at him, trembling. You already gave me everything. No, he said. This time I'm giving it in writing. They didn't sleep much that night. But it wasn't from stress, or fear, or pressure. It was from building and laughing, and finally letting the future in. Jasmine stood in the middle of the future, or rather, the shell of it. The Soho flagship was still under renovation, half drywall, half scaffolding, the scent of raw wood and dust thick in the air. But even unfinished, it felt alive. The floor plan flowed like one of her sketches. Soft curves, unexpected light, no hard corners. A space where creation could happen without tension. Leo stood beside her, coat off, sleeves rolled, surveying the blueprint like a general watching a battlefield. Glass ceilings here, he murmured. Variable tint. Responsive to mood. Biometric scan at entry. 2 levels of privacy calibration. Jasmine raised a brow. Leo, it's a showroom, not a secret base. He smirked. Can't it be both? She laughed, a rich, unguarded sound that bounced off concrete and wiring. They were different, like velvet and voltage. But together, they made something utterly new. By day, they shaped the business. By night, they shaped each other. Sometimes with words, sometimes with silence. Sometimes in the way he gently corrected a code line without challenging her design, or the way she let his touch linger on a mannequin's collar, knowing he wasn't thinking about circuitry, but her. They began to talk about permanence, not just in contracts, but in calendars, in shared holidays, in second bedrooms redesigned into a child's playroom before either of them had admitted aloud they wanted one. It was subtle, but it was building. The world didn't stop watching. Henrik Stahl tried to throw one last dagger, leaking a pitch deck, suggesting Jasmine had repackaged his tech with Leo's brand muscle. But it didn't land. Because this time, the world believed her. Because she'd walked that runway alone. And Leo? He didn't post a rebuttal. He posted a photo, just one, of her hands, covered in thread and dye. Caption: the smartest person in every room I enter. Also the reason I leave those rooms better. It went viral. Not for the romance, but for the reverence. Later that week, as they shared dinner on the rooftop of their loft, cheap takeout in expensive bowls, Jasmine looked across the table at him, noodles dangling from her chopsticks. Would you still want to do this? She asked suddenly, if none of it worked. If the brand failed, the tech broke, the press turned. Leo set his wine down, met her eyes. Yes, even if it all burned. I've burned before. And? He leaned across the table, kissed the tip of her nose. And I'd rather burn with you than shine without you. She blinked, breath-catching. That was disgustingly poetic. I've been practicing. She laughed, wiped a tear. I think, she said, this is what love feels like when it's not afraid of being seen. He nodded, and in the hush that followed, under a Paris-drenched sky and the hum of possibility, they clinked their glasses together, to building, to failing, to trying again, together. Chapter 10. Love That Stuns the World. The day of the Ladon global launch dawned cold and silver in Manhattan. Outside the Soho flagship, a quiet crowd formed long before sunrise. There were no red carpets, no banners. Just a pale logo projected onto the raw concrete facade, Ladon elegant and understated, like a whisper waiting to become thunder. Inside, Jasmine stood before a mirror, breath misting the glass. Her reflection wore a custom Ladon bodysuit beneath a modular white coat, stitched in real time with gold foil thread. Each line pulsed with her heartbeat. She hadn't designed the tech on this one. Leo had. Tell me this doesn't overheat when I get nervous, she muttered. From behind her, Leo's voice. It self-regulates. Like you. She smiled. He stood in the doorway, dressed in charcoal, wearing his nerves like armor. But his eyes were soft. They'd been soft ever since the night he told her he wanted to build forever. And today they would tell the world. At precisely 10 o'clock, M. The doors opened. No music. No walk. Instead, a sequence. Guests entered a room where the lighting shifted based on their proximity to the garments. Screens read nothing. Because the garments spoke, they changed, reacted. Models walked between guests instead of down a runway, showing emotion-driven design in motion. The garments adapted to touch, to voice, to attention. They shimmered under joy, hardened under fear, softened with comfort. It was revolutionary. It was alive. And at the end, just when everyone thought the show was over, Jasmine walked out, not in a gown, in a jumpsuit, bare-faced, hair slicked back, a microphone in one hand. Leo followed, quiet, steady. She turned to the crowd and said, "What we wear is not just about what we want to show, it's what we're afraid to feel. We're here to say, feel everything, and let the world see it." Then she turned to Leo, and for the first time, live, before 1,000 guests. She took his hand. No speech, no labels, just clarity. That night, social media ignited. Ledon isn't fashion. It's a language. When a designer and a technologist fall in love, you get this. The future of fashion has a heartbeat. Later, on the roof of their showroom, Leo set a tablet between them. A silent proposal written in his code, but spoken in her language. She read it once, then again, and said nothing. Instead, she took a stylus and added one word to the bottom. Yes. They didn't need rings that night. They wore what they built. Her jacket. Stitched in memory. His collar. Calibrated to comfort. And around them, New York glowed not brighter, but softer, like love that doesn't need to shout to be heard. 6 months later, the world had changed. Not drastically, not all at once, but in subtle, seismic ways, like how the word wearable no longer meant novelty, but intimacy, like how more and more people were choosing clothing that responded not just to weather, but to feeling. And at the center of it all, Ledon. The company had grown organically, intentionally, without the noise of hype. Their pieces weren't mass-produced. They were commissioned. Clients were guided through sensory interviews. Custom biometric inputs were translated into cloth, texture, voltage, and shape. But success wasn't what stunned the world. It was the love behind it. Not the spectacle of a tabloid romance, but the quiet ferocity of two people who had chosen not just to build something together, but to unbuild every wall they'd once lived behind. On the morning of their wedding, no one wore white. There was no aisle, no podium, no press. Just a rooftop, just 50 guests, and a tailored suit Jasmine had finished herself bone gray with golden thread, coded to reflect her childhood lullaby, the one her grandmother used to hum while weaving fabric by hand in their Brooklyn apartment. Leo wore no tie, no cufflinks, but his inner lining pulsed in low amber her heartbeat, sampled from the launch night and embedded in silk. The ceremony was untraditional. Vows were whispered, not recited. But the emotion? It was unmistakable. "I used to think love was binary," Leo said quietly, standing inches from her. "On or off. 1 or 0. Yours or not." He reached for her hand. "But you taught me that it's fluid. Evolving. Messy. That love is code you can't predict, only learn." Jasmine smiled through tears. "My life was always stitched in defense," she whispered. "Even my dresses had armor. I thought if I made things beautiful enough, I wouldn't feel broken." She lifted his palm to her cheek. "But you didn't try to fix me. You let me feel. You let me stay. And that's all I ever needed." Their kiss wasn't dramatic. It wasn't planned. It was two people who had already chosen each other 100 times before this. The kiss was just the final signature. After the ceremony, they shared lemon cake and rooftop jazz. No photographers. No hashtags. Only family. Friends. And the sun, dipping behind Manhattan like it too, was sighing in relief. Later that night, Jasmine stood in the studio barefoot, wrapped in one of Leo's shirts, sketching a new silhouette. Something soft. Something for comfort, not acclaim. Leo came up behind her, arms circling her waist. "What is it?" he asked, kissing the curve of her neck. She smiled. "Something for us." The piece would never be sold. It was stitched from scraps, programmed to remember the pressure of his arms around her and the scent of their first home. It would hang in their bedroom, humming a quiet, private warmth, not a symbol of wealth, not a prototype, but a memory, the first garment they made as husband and wife.